This is the Two Goal Lead podcast presented by BCHL Network. My name is Brian Weeb. I'm the owner and editor-in-chief of BCHLnetwork.ca. Thanks so much for joining us here on episode number 18 of The Big Show. And you know what? This is a landmark episode of the Two Goal Lead podcast because we have now gone through every single team in the British Columbia Hockey League. That's right. From Alberni Valley to West Kelowna. This is the episode that wraps up our tour around the league for season number 1 of the Two Goal Lead podcast presented by BCHL Network. So our next episode will go back to, alphabetically, the Alberni Valley Bulldogs. But before we get to that though, really glad to be joined by my guest here on the Two Goal Lead podcast presented by BCHL Network. He is the general manager and head coach of the West Kelowna Warriors. It is Simon Ferguson. Simon, thanks so much for taking the time to join us here on the Two Goal Lead podcast presented by BCHL Network.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before we get to the hockey talk, have to talk about the spotlight that's on the Okanagan right now, the devastation of the wildfires in that region. How difficult is it for you to think about hockey at this point?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's first and foremost people and the people within our community, the people within our kind of circle here with the Warriors. We have billet families who step up and take players who are affected right now, and the players are about to arrive with 5 to 10 days. So there is some hockey thought, but you're also thinking of the people who are within those communities and hoping they don't suffer losses that nobody wants to have to deal with.
What role do you feel that an organization like the Warriors plays in helping fight the fires and rebuild the community over there?
Yeah, I mean, we right now we have the food bank and staff from the city utilizing our offices and things like that in the rink here where people are congregating. It's the rink we play out of is kind of a checkpoint for people who have been out of their homes and looking for food and things like that. So we tried to help out there and from this standpoint of bringing the community together back afterwards, I think big stuff, and maybe there's some volunteer stuff we can do to help along the way. I think when it was kind of the fire was really flaring up, the office staff and the coaches were, how can we put on some hard hats and go out there and fight the fire? But of course they don't want people who don't know what they're doing out there. So for us, it's right now it's communicating with the billets, communicating with the families, and seeing how we can help with the people who are out of their homes.
So how much have you seen the community and neighbors sort of band together in a difficult and scary time like this is?
Yeah, all our billets have stayed in pretty good communication from what I can tell, and communication with the kids coming in, and the firefighters, a lot of them are they're coaches, they're hockey players, they've been in the thing, they've been around, so they're billets, so it's not a it's not like just some guy on the other side of town we don't know, and there's a lot of people involved, and through hockey everyone's kind of tied together, so you're seeing that Warrior hockey spirit kind of come out in the firemen and some of the video and images that are coming out.
I mean, obviously that area is a hub for the sport of hockey in British Columbia. When you look at yourselves with the Warriors and the Rockets, of course, and the BCEHL, and then there's the Tier 2 Junior A teams there in the KIJHL, the Okanagan College team. How much do you think that the hockey season will lend some sort of normalcy when things do get going?
Yeah, I guess the only way to kind of interpret that is I go back 20 years, and this fire started the same day somehow as the 2003 fire, and as a 20-year-old on that team with the Rockets, I can kind of remember how much that community came together around the Rockets and the Memorial Cup and the championship that was won there, and it kind of gave everyone something to forget about, I guess, maybe, or maybe it just brought everyone together closer. But I just remember that being a huge deal coming into that year. I arrived as a 20-year-old, and the fire just kind of ended, and and there was still mitigation going on and smoke in the air, and you know, it was quite the atmosphere around that year with the events that the way they finished.
So now switching gears to the sport of hockey, what is your takeaway with your club, the Warriors, from the 22-23 season?
Yeah, I think last year we had some really good skill. I think we probably needed to be a little grittier and a little healthier going into playoffs, and it was a big area of focus that we talked about this summer and spring is how do we make sure we, you know, you can't always stop injuries, but maybe there's ways we can do that better. So that was one of the bigger areas, and then when you're playing against some gritty teams, you got to be a little grittier as well. And how do we adjust, or is it just a personnel thing? And we've had conversations kind of all around that.
We've seen it where the National Hockey League is a copycat league, and given the success that Penticton has had, obviously you play in the same division as the Vs. Do you feel that the BCHL is a bit of a copycat league as well?
Yes and no. I mean, everyone in this league, I think, strives to find the best players they can, and you know, Penticton the last 2 years undoubtedly had three of the best players in the league, in my opinion, in Bradley Nadeau and Josh Nadeau, and the addition of Adar Suniev, and I think those were huge factors. They had good goalies, and but when you have two guys like that driving their team, Josh and Bradley, who are some of the younger players on the team, you know, everyone has no choice but to kind of come along with it. But I don't think anyone sat back and went, I don't want Josh or Bradley. Everyone tried to get him, and at the time we were in the conversation, but we didn't land in that sphere. So, you know, teams will play structures. I think more copycat becomes with the structures, like, is our team's going to play like Vegas in the D zone? Our team's going to forecheck like Tampa, and that, and really everyone's trying to get the best players they can. And when you've won 2 championships in a row, and however many they have over the years, it's a place that is hard to recruit against, I would say, from everyone in the BCHL. Like, they do a really good job there, and it's good for us and the rest of the league to raise our game.
So on that note, how's your feeling on how recruiting has gone this offseason?
Yeah, I think it's been good. Last 2 years we finished in 3rd place. Year before I think we had more wins to finish for 2nd place behind them, and we actually won the regular season series against Penticton in the regular season, but did fail to do it in the playoffs. So I feel kind of the same way going into this year with cautious optimistics. I like the team, I like the skill, and let's see if they can put it together.
Were you looking at some specific holes to fill in your lineup when you went out to start recruiting for the upcoming year?
I don't know that we were looking for holes. I think we were looking for the right pieces and the right players and the right ability and the right strengths to add to the lineup. Sometimes I think we got some players who are better than we expected, and maybe they bumped some other players. But I don't think, from my standpoint anyway, that we need this left wing shot on the first line, as opposed to let's get the best players we can find.
What do you think are your team's strengths going into this upcoming year?
Yeah, we're going to have good speed, good team IQ, and I'm hoping a lot more grit than our team had last year.
Which returning players are you counting on to sort of make a leap in their development this season?
Yeah, I think Isaiah Norland's going to have another big year for us. He should be one of the top defensemen in the year in the league. Brennan Nelson, another guy who's kind of just keeps making leaps and bounds. He's been with us for 4 years now from Penticton. He's going to have another big year, and we're expecting big things out of him. And Felix Caron, probably the one with the biggest leap, and we're expecting him to take a massive step and be one of the top scorers in the league.
We've seen several recruits signed across the BC Hockey League this offseason from all over the world, and with rosters and different ages too, with rosters now open to under 18 players from across North America, plus you can add 2 international players as well. What do you think is the hardest thing for a new player to adjust to when they first join the BCHL?
I think the speed of junior hockey compared to prep hockey or U18 hockey, the speed of the game, the way it's thought. I think people maybe underestimate how good the BCHL is. It's a really good league. It's a fast league. It's a smart league. And when you're coming out of prep hockey, it's definitely faster, and I think even with the Europeans, I think you'll see some adjustment period because the rink's smaller and speed will be as good or better than they've seen.
How much do some of those European players reflect an unknown because you really don't know how they'll adapt?
Yeah, I think it depends team by team. It's the same as recruiting a prep school kid who's got 2 points per game. You don't know for sure. You hope you get it right. In saying that, you can go off the history of what they've done in previous leagues, and for my guys, we're looking at the Swedish J20 league, and it's a really good league over there. Comparable, if not pretty close in hand to our skill level. So we feel pretty confident that our guys are going to be able to come in and be impact players with maybe a tiny bit of adjustment period.
Back in June, we saw Warriors alumnus Charles-Alexis Legault selected in the 5th round by the Carolina Hurricanes at the NHL draft. Although you only had Legault in West Kelowna for 1 season before he moved on to play NCAA hockey at Quinnipiac, what stuck out to you about his game that makes him an NHL prospect?
Yeah, I mean, we really had him almost a year and a half because he was with us during the exhibition season during COVID, when COVID shut everything down, and then we lost him there to the USHL and got him back after that. But Charles is a guy that I think should have got drafted the year before, but he's a guy that is going to will himself into the NHL. I don't think there's any player I've ever seen that will work harder. Sometimes I think he works too hard, but he is the hardest working hockey player I've ever seen. I used to get calls on Sunday asking me who the player was on a day off, asking me who the player was running stairs in the rink, and I knew who it was. I didn't have to worry about it. And I think when we recruited him, the family told me that if he didn't have access at 6 a.m., he might go crazy from working out. And I thought they were lying to me, and they weren't. He would come in the room by himself at 6 a.m. and do workouts before everyone else got here and add an extra stuff after practice. That was the biggest thing for me is his will to work and his will to play in the NHL.
How much did that will to work elevate some of his teammates to see how hard he's going at it, and then all of a sudden they feel like they need to up their game as well? I think a good handful of guys really embraced what he did and saw it be successful for him and take it onto themselves. I wish we could have had him for a full 2 years and COVID hadn't have shut us down, because he's one of those guys that would have dragged guys along with him. He's an incredible talent, and I think Carolina's got a really good pick there. When you joined the Warriors 4 years ago as head coach, what lessons did you take from your time when you were coaching the Okanagan Rockets U18 team in that BCEHL?
Yeah, I spent some time at different U18 levels doing skill development. I think the biggest thing is communication. I think when you first become a coach, you can emulate a few of the successful coaches you've seen, and times have changed a little bit, and some of those guys probably wouldn't have done so well in today's era in their approach. And so I think my first few years I was a little less communicative than I could have been, and that would probably be the biggest case is more communication with the guys and seeing how they're doing and making sure they understand where we're at.
Now, since there's only 24 hours in a day during the season, how do you balance the role of being a head coach and general manager?
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky. I've got a lot of really good help. Our owner, John Murphy, is probably one of the smarter hockey guys I've met. He played at Harvard himself. His kid played at Harvard. And so I do a lot of work beside him as well, and he lives out in Massachusetts area, so he gets to see a lot of players, and we bounce ideas off. So I get a lot of help there that maybe some other guys don't have. So, but in saying that, we spend a lot of time on video, and during the season, kind of wave goodbye to your family a little bit, and you put it full in, and you go, and you hopefully takes a little bit more time with the family in the summer.
Okay, so a couple of light ones to leave things off here with. You had an extensive playing career in professional hockey and in major junior. Who is the best player that you've ever played with?
Bobby Ryan. Bobby Ryan probably was the best player as a forward, and I would argue Duncan Keith would be the best player as a defenseman. But I also played with Seabrook and Georges, who were also pretty good there as well, and Shea Weber. So it would be a pretty tough choice. But as a forward, I think nobody had more talent than Bobby Ryan. I think if you ever seen one of those pros versus Joes game, we would do stick handling Joes after practice in the American League, and sometimes I felt like the Joe when I was playing against him.
All right, so now how about this? Who's the best player you ever played against?
That's a good question. I don't know that I could. I guess Patrick Marleau probably would be up there. An exhibition game in the NHL. He's pretty good. On the Ducks. Yeah, I skated on the Ducks with some pretty incredible talent the year that exhibition game. The year they won the Stanley Cup as well. So it's hard to kind of name them off though.
How much of an eye opener was that?
Yeah, at the time I thought it had gone really well, and for me the biggest lesson I took was sometimes you only get one chance, and I think I made one pretty heinous mistake in the game and got cut in my gear after the game. So that was the biggest thing is I tell these guys is you don't know if someone's going to show up in practice, if they're going to show up for one game, and that's your opportunity. And maybe it's the third period, their flight got delayed and they showed up, and it was a third period and we're down by 6, and your body language is going to dictate what they saw and what they think of you. So that's the biggest thing for me.
Fantastic stuff, Simon. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. Obviously, thoughts with everyone there in the Okanagan, and best of luck during the 23-24 season.
Thank you very much.
As we're recording this, it's a difficult time for those in the Okanagan here in British Columbia, and actually the smoke is really blanketing the entire province at this point. And so really thoughts go out, as I mentioned there with Simon, to everybody in the Okanagan and those who have lost their homes. And as of this recording, want to mention no reports yet of any fatalities due to the fires in British Columbia. And that is excellent news, and hopefully it stays that way. Again, that's as of this recording for the 2 Goal Lead podcast presented by BCHL Network. Okay, so that does it for episode number 18. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for being along for the ride. Back in January, started this podcast. First guest was BCHL Commissioner Stephen Cocker. We've gone through all 17 teams. A lot has happened since the first podcast launched back in January as well. BCHL ends up leaving Hockey Canada. Wenatchee Wild end up leaving the BC Hockey League. And we've seen all sorts of different changes in terms of roster composition. And now we're ready to drop the puck for the 23-24 BC Hockey League season. Before we get to that, though, we're going to have some more episodes of this 2 Goal Lead podcast because the season doesn't start until early October. So there is still definitely some time. By the way, would love for you to check out bchlnetwork.ca. Writers are working diligently on content there for you. And if you'd like to join the team at BCHL Network, well, there is an opportunity for you to do that. It's really simple, actually. All you have to do is go to the website, click on Join Our Team. There's a form that you can fill out, and that'll send an email to me. The requirement, by the way, is that you have a social media platform to be able to share your content. Yeah, we haven't been blocked by Meta yet. And then also you do need to be able to publish a minimum of 2 500-word articles per calendar month. So it's not a heck of a lot. If you're looking to get some experience in terms of writing, in terms of sports media, we've had writers get accreditation to BC Hockey League games. It's really a cool opportunity to dip your toes, or if you just want to sort of scratch that itch of doing some sports writing, happy to have you along. So definitely fill out that form, shoot me an email, and we'll see what we can do about getting you on board with BCHL Network. Also want to thank you for subscribing and liking this 2 Goal Lead podcast presented by BCHL Network. You can find it in all sorts of different places: Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Stitcher, pretty much everywhere you get your favorite podcast. So I would absolutely love if you could like and subscribe. All right, that's going to do it for episode number 18. Again, thank you so much for listening. Surely do appreciate it. I know, don't call me Shirley. Okay, that's an old joke. I'm showing my age. Anyway, we'll talk to you again on episode number 19 of the 2 Goal Lead podcast, when our guest will be from the Alberni Valley Bulldogs. Take care. Talk to you then.